Hi everybody, it's Jose here, and today I want to talk to you about inspections and release and cancellation. Now, we have two different contracts. We have an as-is purchase contract and we have a standard FAR contract. Now, a lot of times I train you guys how to use the as-is contract because it's most widely used, and it's going to be the one that most sellers want to see submitted in an offer. And this one will give your buyer the right to inspect and the right to cancel at buyer's sole discretion. So if your buyer puts in an offer on a property with an as-is contract, it typically gives them anywhere from 10 to 15 days to do an inspection of the property. Now, they're not required to have an actual home inspector go into the property and perform a home inspection. The buyer can actually go in for whatever reason on their own and just make a determination on their own that they just don't like the house or it's not what they wanted, but they have to make that decision in the 10 or 15 days or however many days were assigned to them in the contract. Now, within that time period, you have to either do one of the following. So you have to go back to the seller and say, seller, I want you to either A, make these repairs that we're requesting. We understand that it's as is, but in order for us to proceed without canceling, we're asking you for these repairs. Now, either the seller will choose to do those repairs or they'll say, no, I don't want to make any repairs. I prefer you cancel, as long as the buyer makes a cancellation within the time frame specified within that inspection clause. Number two, the buyer can say, you know what, seller? I just determined that I don't want to buy this property because I saw a hole in one of the walls. Now, even if the seller says, you know what, I'll fix the hole in the wall, no problem, I'll fix it, I want you to proceed with the purchase. The buyer is not obligated to make the purchase because the buyer chose to cancel within their inspection period, and they could cancel for whatever reason at all, even without getting an inspection. So, rule number one, if your buyer is dragging their feet and they do not have their inspection performed within the time frame, or maybe the next to last day of the time frame, on day 9 they had their inspection, and on day 9 they say, can you please have the seller make these 3 repairs? We want the AC unit fixed, we want a hole in the wall replaced, and then there's a window in the back that won't fully open or close. If you go and send a written request saying, seller, please make the following repairs to these items by a licensed contractor on day 9, and if the seller doesn't reply to you within the 10 days or whatever time frame is specified in the contract, then the buyer has to submit a written release and cancellation within that time frame. So just because they requested the repairs within their time frame doesn't mean they necessarily have given an actual written release and cancellation within the time frame that they're supposed to do it. So in my opinion, you should ask for those repairs, and if you're up against the clock, then you should also send a written release and cancellation at the same time. So now the seller can take all the time that they want to make a determination if they want to make those repairs or sign the written release and cancellation. Either way, your buyer's protected. That's the best way to handle it. And as far as the other contract is concerned, the standard FAR purchase contract, well, this is more complicated, and it's asking your buyer to upfront ask the seller for money towards repairs before they've even had time to do an inspection. So it's very difficult for a buyer, nonetheless, you, the agent, that, you know, my buyer's not an inspector, they're not a contractor, neither am I. How do we know how much money to ask that seller for repairs upfront when we haven't even performed an inspection yet? Was it too much? Was it too little? Who knows? But even after that's the case, say you ask for $3,000 in repairs up front, if the buyer does do an inspection of the property and then the inspection repairs come back at maybe $8,000 in total cost, the seller then would only be obligated to make $3,000 in repairs, and then the remainder would either be the responsibility of the buyer to repair on their own and pay out of pocket, or the buyer can say, you know what, we went past the $3,000, so I don't want to buy the house anymore. I want to cancel the contract, and they can. Unless the seller says, wait, I'll go ahead and make all repairs and I'll do all $8,000 in repairs and I'll take care of that on my own. Then the buyer is still obligated to make that purchase. So it's kind of weird, it's kind of convoluted. You put 5 agents in a room and you ask them how that inspection part of the contract works on a standard FAR, and you're going to have 5 different answers or responses come back. That's why I like using the standard as-is purchase contract, because it's very clear and concise. So there you have it. If you work with a buyer, please use an as-is purchase contract. It's going to protect your buyer. It's not going to obligate the seller to any repairs. And as long as you ask for those repairs within the time frame or send a written release and cancellation within the time frame, your buyer's safe. They get their escrow deposit back. Everyone's happy. you can call it a day. So there you have it, a little bit of information on the as-is contract and standard 4-bar contract when it comes to inspections, releases, and cancellations.